everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Fourth Wave in Therapy podcast. We have just been having a laugh offline before we hit record about who I am actually speaking to today. Now, I've been talking to Gavin Abeyratne for about a month or so now, just about some other things. I had a chat about EFT on one of his platforms. And Gavin's just sent me his bio of who he is, because I'm like, come on my podcast, let's have a chat. I'm just going to introduce Gavin to you so that everyone can be as speechless as me right now. So Gavin sent his bio through and said to me, look, I've got a Buddhist dad and a Catholic mum. Now, why that might be relevant is the conversation that we're going to have today. But Gavin's background includes being a senior executive at Mind Valley. Now, I'm sure all our listeners are familiar with Mind Valley. Pushed a lot out on EFT tapping and chakra healing through Mind Valley. Worked on the biggest research project tracking persistent non-symbolic experiences with Dr. Jeffrey Martin from the California Institute of Integral Studies. Launched the book Stealing Fire. This is the part where I just started to unravel, with Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler. Now, I have that book on my shelf right here in my office. Gavin tells me he's got a signed copy behind him on his bookshelf. Stealing Fire. If you haven't actually read that one, everybody, you absolutely need to have a look. Performance, leadership, and the Navy SEALs. Studied himself, behavioural studies at Monash, marketing, lots of things there. Mind Medicine Australia, working with them, training hundreds of clinicians in psychedelic-assisted therapies, another area, very fourth wave that we dive deep into here as well. And it just goes on. And that is our conversation today. So, Gavin, welcome and thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Peter. I love that introduction. It's nice to contextualize my own lived experience every so often. I just kind of throw myself into stuff, and it's nice to reflect. So I appreciate that.
I know what you mean, and we're deciding of a new title we're going to come up with your other wave in life that you're heading down towards now as well, what we're going to call you. So we'll come up with something creative maybe out of today's conversation.
That would be great.
We're really, and why I wanted to have this conversation, I guess, in the context of the fourth wave in therapy, this particular podcast, is very much about the work that you have done in, leadership coaching. Some of that's been marketing and definitely crossed over, and obviously you've been part of that with things like, Stealing Fire and the promotion and things like that. But the energy clearing work that has emerged in your field now and what you're applying your skills to, where do you want to start there?
Yeah. Look, it's a great question. So, well, I guess in the discussion around like the third wave that we had on when you came on my platform, all of those third wave, all of that third wave stuff essentially got clustered into NLP, I feel. And then NLP kind of made it into personal development. And then a lot of that stuff started being used in, just general personal development. And I feel as though as the fourth wave comes online, there's now going to be a new clustering. And this is essentially what I'm trying to do, the clustering of all of these modalities in terms of how they can be compressed and used in a subclinical way for, not acute trauma treatment or crisis management or anything like that, but stuff that shows up in leadership development and people being more effective in the workplace. Stuff like, feeling comfortable being seen, feeling comfortable being heard, speaking up in meetings, putting themselves out there. And for me, it really showed up as a marketing consultant when I'd often ask people to do things like, okay, cool, we're going to do an Instagram reel or put yourself out in a Facebook ad. And there would be this somatic, tension and shrinking away from doing the thing. And no matter what was going on in the mind, obviously the cognitive, there was still a somatic resistance against it. And so this really just kind of frustrated me for a while, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, well, I guess it's just part of the thing. And it was essentially just try and push through. And then during COVID, I started renting a little office near me. I was living in Geelong down on the surf coast. And so we still had a bit more latitude. And one of the guys in there was a EMDR therapist. His name was Shannon Bowman, amazing guy, became a friend. And one day he was like, oh, you've got this cool lifestyle. You're walking around doing your marketing stuff. Will you start working with me? So I started working with him. Of course, I sit in his office, and what do I see? But all of these negative beliefs and stuff just in his office. And I was like, oh, I didn't know this is what psychotherapy, I didn't know this is what you're doing in psychotherapy. He goes, yeah, sure. What are you triggered by? Do you want to, I can show you how it works. And so I was like,
were they literally on the walls as written statements?
Yeah. Statements on the wall for like some of the negative beliefs. Like here's a little list of things that you might find, I'm not good enough, or, the kind of stuff that we used to have on Mind Valley. Like when we launched Marissa Peer's stuff, we used to get people to write on their mirror, I'm good enough, because that was one of the affirmations, and, I'm enough, all these kind of things. And so then he just did some EMDR, like sort of regression-based stuff with me, very fourth wave. And it wasn't around anything particularly acute. Just one of my, friends or colleagues was triggering me at the time. And it was amazing to experience that. And I was like, oh, wow, you just sort of neutralized that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So I started experimenting with a little bit more of that in my own work in marketing. And people just started having really good results because it would start decreasing the friction around them taking the steps that they needed to take. So that kind of kicked off, I suppose, the cognitive somatic piece for me in terms of that subclinical use. Is that making sense? Because this might be all over the place.
No, totally. And it is probably sometimes that first experience, isn't it? And it's the same with me with EFT. I dismissed it for months with a colleague trying to tell me about it, but it wasn't until I saw it happen, I'm kind of like, what has just happened here? That sort of thing that often, makes that decision point easier, or you become open, perhaps,
Yes.
So if that, and maybe background and upbringing has kind of informed this, but if that is what started a path for you here, what was it that you were noticing then, whether it was at Mind Valley or doing marketing for Stephen's book or whatever, where maybe you were noticing, hey, this seems pretty common out there in the world that people have these limiting beliefs and maybe we could help them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I mean, the first, so time gets a little nonlinear for me in these sorts of conversations, but one of the other experiences I had with this was when I was at Mind Valley, and we launched a program the first one I ever launched at Mind Valley was from Carol Tuttle, who was a chakra healer. And it was around.
Carol. She now does all the color, the clothing and the color.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And so that one was called Soul Print Healing for Affluence. And we started using regression techniques even back then to start looking at people's first experiences around wealth. And that was one of the first times I sat on that. And I was like, that's really, really fascinating. So money is a huge area in which, abundance and affluence and whatever you want to call it around people will have a lot of limiting beliefs, especially in the caring professions and the healing professions. My mum's a mental health nurse, funnily enough. And so, I know how that goes. So that's one area. The other one is often in terms of power and, which kind of shows up in the boundaries and the assertiveness and some of those areas where it can be really challenging and people can have had some experiences where it maybe didn't feel safe to express their needs totally. And so that can also show up as potentially less of a limiting belief and more of just a discomfort in the expression of a certain way of being.
Yeah. So did it lead you were launching these programs, you were noticing the effects on people. Did it kind of spark something in you? And you used the word subclinical earlier about maybe we're not talking about full-blown disorders here and things like that, but maybe these limits that we carry around with us that obviously are imprinted on us from a very young age who we're exposed to. Is that what sparked the interest, I guess, in helping people maybe in that leadership kind of space take it to the next level?
Yeah, that's exactly that. And so, I'd been immersed in this world for so long, I hadn't really applied it in my own practice. And so my business partner at the time, Colton, and I, we were like, well, what would you actually have to work on for people to get them to really succeed? And so we started just blending all of the various philosophies that we had at that point in time. And the first one was, of course, it was developmental in nature. And it was that people we found really took action on things when they found what was called a self-transcendent purpose. And that was the purpose that went beyond their sense of individual self-interest. So I was like, okay, well, we need to start with self-transcendent purpose. And I'd always do that with marketing, a bit of a Simon Sinek start with why, to really rally people around, well, what are you actually trying to do? That was super effective. And then the second one that would often come up was, of course, shadow work, where people would have a projection or a judgment around something, which it would just feel too inconsistent with their sense of self for them to be able to do it. So, you tell someone to do something with marketing and they'd be like, oh, I don't want to be one of those influencer types or, something like that. Or I could never be as good as this person. So you'd see projection and judgment in the shadow, among other things. And then we're like, okay, well, it also comes up socially because people, we're very social creatures and they'd say things that were very tribal and identity based, like, oh, that's not how we do things as this. And, we were taught not to do this. So it was quite limiting at the social level. And then we got into state eventually and somatic much later on. I figured these things out. And then eventually story, because ultimately these are the sort of 6 forces that are affecting what's going on in the psyche. And unless you kind of hit all of them at the same time, it's very hard to create sustainable behavioral change, in my experience, over, to get people to really transform.
So can we break this down just for a minute?
Yeah,
And I'm trying to scribble down these six things. You know them off the top of your head, but
sure.
maybe to apply it to just a common area in life.
Yeah,
I don't. You can pick one maybe, but just show us how this might be able to be transformed if we were just, someone listening in kind of identifies today with maybe the topic that we're talking about.
yeah,
Maybe money is a good one because often
sure.
people, abundance, whether that does actually physically mean cash and wealth or it does mean something else, abundant in love, abundant lifestyle, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
How does this apply? So is that self transcendent, that first step? Is that about why do I want to change this?
Yeah, well, exactly. And so a lot of the time, the conditioning around money, we can do a good sentence completion testing here. Money is the root of all.
What's the first thing? Now, I grew up Catholic.
Yep.
So, what's the first thing a Catholic thinks? I'm generalizing here, everybody. Money is the root of all evil.
Yep.
So, very much, and I understand that's not actually the line in the Bible, but
Hmm.
very kind of ingrained in Sunday school kind of concepts. Yeah. Whereas the traditional line, I believe, is money is not the love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself, the love of money and what that meant. So just what came to mind.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so this is true for almost everyone. Like I said, I was raised, Catholic on that side as well. And there's a lot of enculturation. And so that's why we look at the social element of it, because the enculturation around that upbringing, it's precognitive and it shows up deep in the unconscious. And so that's a big one. So this first point, and then with the self-transcendence, is to essentially expand the sense of self so that your self-interest starts to include others as well. And this is how you can reconcile the tension between the self and other, where it's like, well, take yourself, for example. I think you're a really, really good example of this, whether you do it consciously or not. You run one of the most conscious businesses around, and your influences and the expansion of your business is directly correlating with the propagation of a more effective modality that's going to help people across the board. So it's like there, from my perspective, whether you've done this consciously or not, I think you're a really good example of it. To be honest with you, just to case in point it. Well, you know what I mean? Because it's like, well, sure. You know what I mean? Well, it's like, cool. The more your business scales, the more you're going to train EFT therapists, the more they're going to get out there, the more the people buy your courses.
I would absolutely own that anyone from the inside would know that that has been in correlation with my own personal growth. So
100%. Yeah.
absolutely. So if anyone looks at it and it makes you laugh with the overnight success stuff, and it's like, oh no, this stuff's been going on for 20 years. So it has been in absolute sync with my own personal kind of transformation and dealing with my own stuff as it comes up.
Yeah, that's why I didn't feel bad sending you my bio 10 minutes before we met, because I'm like, I know you're all over this. I know you're all over this because I've been on your email list. I see what you're sending out, and you've clearly done the work, right? So reconciling that contradiction between self and other, where my success is other success because I'm so embodied in my purpose, so that's kind of where you have to start. And when you speak from that basis, it's really simple. And then the second one would be shadow. I'm sure it can apply to you as well. I asked you this on when I asked you. Tall poppy syndrome, right? Who am I to put myself out there? Who am I to be doing all this? Am I just going to be one of those talking heads? No, you're doing that now in service of a greater purpose. So that's a potential shadow that someone might experience in terms of becoming a thought leader or becoming an author, right?
Yeah.
All this sort of stuff can come up.
Yeah.
Golden shadow projection often happens at that point as well, and that can totally happen in the spiritual spaces where people.
Tell me more about that. What do you
Golden
mean?
shadow is when you project the positive traits, your positive traits onto someone else, and then you get this sort of.
We call that impression management in psychology.
Yes.
Yep. Comes up in personality tests. Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So lots of different words for phenomena that just appears to be.
Golden shadow. Wow. All right.
Yeah, so that's a Jungian one. The golden shadow is a really interesting one to work with because, people will often project that onto other people. So we just say, okay, well, look at who you admire, and what about the people that you admire can you also own in yourself? Not that you are that person or even where that person is, but you might have some of those traits and begin to embody them. So that's the shadow. And that's that much of the shadow for the Jungians out there, but it's enough to be practical, right?
Sure.
And then the social context, exactly as you said, just like looking into your enculturation, what were your family's beliefs around money? What does your cultural beliefs around money? And you can appreciate that a lot of these probably were true, like even 50 to 100 years ago. Like if you had an economy where the only way you could get wealthy was hoarding material things and coveting things that other people couldn't have, well, in that kind of economy, yeah, sure, like the love of money would probably be a win-lose dynamic. But in this day and age, when you can sell an digital information product or, something like this, it's like your creation of wealth doesn't necessarily need to diminish anyone else's experience of wealth. So we kind of have reconciled that contradiction there, which is another bit, not all the time, but enough of the time, right? It's like buying, Peter's EFT course or one of mine, something. It's not going to decrease someone else's wealth. It's not taking. So that's a good one to go through. And then the somatic and the state piece is very interesting. This is really, really interesting because, and this is really where the rubber, I feel, met the road for me when I started to go into this place, which is why I thought the fourth wave stuff was so interesting. It's that there is a somatic, almost like a nourishment threshold or an upper limit, after which someone feels that it's too much. They can't have this much love. They can't have this much money. They can't have this much success. And that sort of puts a natural internal limit on what they can receive. And that's a really, really big one to work into.
And is that felt somatically? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. It's felt somatically. And it's kind of it's not so much a fear of failure. It's actually, in some cases, a fear of success, if you wanted to look at it like that.
Wow. Okay. So all of these pieces started to come together for you out of all the roles that you've played out there and jobs you've done and things like that. And you've developed then a perspective, I guess, that started to make sense. And I'm guessing started to gain traction with people that you might have been working with as far as outcomes and things like that. I mean, where is now you're in this leadership kind of area with your work. Do you think there's an appetite? Are people looking at these, maybe they're in these high level roles, maybe they aspire to be, but are leaders out there in the world, in your world, are they looking for this transformation work? Are they open to it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I'll give you an example of this sort of high performance mindset, right? That like I want to be top 1% in whatever it is I do. And it's a really good example. And it was a strange place I met him. My friend Shannon, actually, the psychotherapist who I mentioned from Geelong, I was at his Bucks night. And, nothing shady. We're just at the it's like a restaurant beforehand. And I was sitting next to this guy, and he was this really humble guy. He was a police officer who was applying for a position. He was an elite police officer applying for a very, very elite position within the force. And he was talking about, his skills, and he was really quite humble. And I was just like, oh, you could do it some more, you should own your achievements a bit more, this whole tall poppy thing. And I was like, mate, you're awesome. Shannon's told me about you. I know you should own it. He goes, okay, cool. And I said to him, what's that?
Be more awesome.
Be more awesome. Yes, there's vision's influence on me. Everything's awesome. And so I said to him, are you interested in trying something a little bit out there? And he goes to me, mate, whatever gets me in the top 1%. And I think that's probably the name of the game, right? And I saw that with I met one of those stealing via Navy SEALs at the book launch. He was there, and he said something really fascinating. And he was just like, the hardest thing to do is not pull the trigger. And it was basically around decreasing reactivity, and all of the Huberman Lab stuff is all around. I mean, it's a lot of Eastern stuff essentially being languaged in a Western way. Non-sleep, deep rest, yoga nidra. Breath work, pranayama. It's sort of, there's a bit of an East meets West situation going on here, which I think is fantastic. It's good to have these worlds converge. So people are absolutely open to it. And I think you're absolutely on the money that the fourth wave is now going to make its way into leadership development with all sorts of stuff, cold plunge therapy for high performance, not just even at the consciousness level, but also within all these bodily practices, and people totally have an appetite for it.
And I think you see that, don't you, just at a local community level with what's being embraced as wellness activities. You mentioned cold plunge, things like that, but, yoga being embraced, but then trauma-informed yoga, as well as, meditation practices. Joe Dispenza's a friend of mine, and,
absolutely.
And him and I have talked, at length about that first 10 years of him out there trying to share. He remembers, pulling the car over, driving to a retreat, just sitting in the car crying, going, people don't get it. And no one would look at what he does now in meditation as far as, thousands of people that turn up to these events to get this experience. And the group collective, they measure the energetic field in that room of everyone meditating at the same time, because you can actually do that. Now everyone's like, meditation, I meditate. Yes, I do my breathing practices, and I do my cold plunges, and I do my sauna and all those kind of things. And now it's this embracing that it does appear to be happening at a collective kind of level, doesn't it? That
Yeah,
And I agree with you. The meeting, and I hope we don't lose too much in, the East meets West kind of paradigm, because it's been around and worked for thousands of years. Let's not lose the translation there. And,
I
and
got
I, I've,
yeah,
had, I've had a student pull apart mindfulness in a thesis dissertation
yeah,
because of what was lost, and gone on to do some kind of good work trying to get people back to what was
totally.
the essence and the roots of why mindfulness worked,
Yeah,
not necessarily the commercialized version of it, that kind of thing.
I
um,
totally agree. Yep.
yeah, so fascinating. It's amazing, and I'm with you. The fourth wave. I'm like, I think we've been here, kind of getting this wave ready for the last decade at least, and we're now seeing people embracing, despite perhaps ticks of approval from certain bodies and things like that around the world. That appears not to be needed as much anymore for people to embrace these things, even at an organizational level. Like, we are getting requests and openness and embracing of even EFT, despite perhaps that it's not on some list somewhere,
Yeah.
that says it's okay, because of the research and all those kind of things. So tell me, in the leadership management kind of area, the 1%, the Stephen Kotler's books, I've done work with Andrew Newberg in meditation, conscientiousness, and conscious states, things like that as well.
Mm.
In your bio, I mentioned psychedelic-assisted therapy, and of course,
Mm.
we've got students studying that as well. We expose them, and what I mean by that is knowledge only, not actual substances in our lectures. Like, where does that play a role? Is that something that we have here in Australia had psychedelic-assisted therapy approved, psilocybin in particular, for refractory PTSD and things like that in the right professions?
Mm.
Where's that playing a role?
Yeah, great question. Great question. And I threw all those S's at you without even letting you know before. So you did an amazing job of taking it through. But just to close that loop, the last one is actually story. And story is the interface essentially between the inner world and the outer world when you do it at the inner level. And, from a marketing perspective, story is really how we're going to bridge these gaps between East and West, between clinical and non-clinical, and all these things. So that's kind of where that ends, and it's the self-authoring as well. But ultimately, I find in the marketing world and in the business world, and it's all a story. People are all just experiencing some level of story. So I'll close that loop now. So thanks for that. And yeah, and so then yeah, totally. In terms of psychedelic assisted therapy, how has that affected this whole emergence of fourth wave? The thing we found in that world when I got brought into it, and to be honest with you, I had no experience with psychedelics at all before Stealing Fire. I just launched Vision's book as a New York Times bestseller with Colton. So they're like, hey, launch this one. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, whatever. I read the book and was like, seemed like a fun.
Can we just say the title of the book in case anyone's madly scribbling notes here? So that was Vision Mind Valley. Vision?
Yeah, Vision from Mind, Code of the Extraordinary Mind. I was there at that time and then launched that
Code
one.
of the Extraordinary Man. And I have that one at home. Yep.
Yeah, great book. Great book as
Great.
well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so basically what we found is that people were already experimenting with altering state in various ways, right? And that was basically the thesis of Stealing Fire, which was really fascinating. People were doing it either through yoga, potentially even tantra, downhill skiing. All of these things were neurochemically very similar, and people were essentially already trying to alter state. And what was happening was that when people found these altered states, they were using them as part of their recovery process to show up as better leaders and partners, and whatever it was. Because in many ways, I think as a parent, you're naturally a leader of your little family anyway. So I use that term a little more broadly potentially than most. And so that was causing a lot of people to be interested in this stuff. And I think if people are interested in something, there's really a scope for it to be used properly. And I think probably the most important chapter in Stealing Fire was the perils of ecstasis, which was like what it was like to go too far into these states. And so that was something I thought was really, really interesting. And Jeffrey's work around persistent non-symbolic experience kind of related very much to this idea around states of consciousness and altering states being something that was really powerful, but not to be taken too lightly and not to be sort of just flippant about.
Absolutely. And look, we talk even in our teaching levels, in university programs, about the dark side of even practices such as mindfulness. It's contraindicated for certain kind of symptomology. We even talk about the dark side of self-help. So I've had clients myself over the years where, for whatever reason, they didn't have to kind of, go to work every day. So every day was filled with some sort of self-help activity.
Mm-hmm.
But that in amongst itself could sometimes ended up in sort of a dark place where there was no interaction with other people, society. There was no feedback system, I guess, about whether or not transformation was happening, because that was so every single day was some sort of fairly solitary transformation self-help activity.
Yeah.
And we're all for self-help and, doing all the activities, but not 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And I think that's a really good point to make, from Stephen's book, but also just out there generally, that there's a dark side. I remember my mother saying a long, long time ago, even if you eat too much watermelon, it'll make you sick. So it's that same kind of analogy, isn't it? That everything in moderation, including things that are good for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely spot on. And especially when you're altering state, it's almost always best done in group, because one of the things around the nature of self is a relational concept, right? Like case in point, I could have introduced myself as, Gav the, plumber from down the road, and now all of a sudden I'm Gav the plumber, right? It's like these are all stories, right? In terms of how we tell, talk about ourselves and what have you. And so when you start altering your sense of self in isolation, it's very challenging to integrate back into society. And so you typically want to sort of look at, the society that you're trying to integrate with, the culture you're trying to integrate with, and sort of always bridging that inner world and that outer world, and sort of having that communication between the two. Otherwise, it can be pretty challenging, which is why that social component is quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not recommending anyone listening in that you rush off to attempt to try any of these things. Certainly, wherever you are in the world, they may or may not be legal, kind of, and if indeed they are, then we absolutely recommend, accessing services that can support these kind of practices and things like that as well. So how does it all come together for you then, in terms of your journey from here? You talked to me about an alchemy kind of, phrase of this all coming together, and the work that maybe is drawing you forward now.
Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. And, I feel as though once the sort of something's out in the open, it kind of needs to be done properly. And so integral alchemy is what I've called it thus far. There's been a few name changes over the years, but integral alchemy is where we're at. And alchemist might be the identity that suits me best. We'll see. But it's an attempt to synthesize and synergize the various different types of I guess supposed psychologies or personal development tools into a relatively simple to understand framework, so that people can be aware of how everything impacts on everything else and really be a beneficiary of these things. And this is true for practitioners as well, who might use it for case conceptualization and sort of mapping. Oh, okay, well, this is an interesting way to map. Well, okay, well, what's this person's purpose? Where are they having some shadows? How are they enculturated? All these kind of things. So it's quite useful from that respect. And then also just for the prosumer, which you've seen a huge explosion of this since COVID, when, of course, all mental health went online, and clinicians who would never put anything online were now starting to put stuff online. And I think that's when really people started doing a lot of self-diagnosis into early childhood trauma and all these kinds of things, right? Personally, that's when I feel it really, really exploded. And so if the things are out there in this prosumer world, I think it's nice to at least synergize these maps and models and bring together some of the best and brightest minds, yourself evidently being one of them, which is why this is why we had this interview with you last month first, incidentally, to start like, okay, well, if these things are out here and people are looking at them, well, how do we understand these as maps and models for understanding the human experience? And part of that, I think, is that, whatever profession you're in, Peter Drucker, the management consultant, said this a few decades ago, the big challenge of the 21st century is going to be the management of self, and really the management of self in relation to others, i.e. interpersonal development. I think personal development should probably be called interpersonal development, because most of the issues are really, really relational. Hence you get into leadership. And everyone kind of needs to become an expert in their own human operating system, right? It's like, even if you tend to see this in leadership, people will be very technically skilled, and then sort of in that mid phase of their career, they realize the next step for them has nothing to do with how much better they get with their technical skills. It's their communication styles, their ability to show up and lead and have presence and emotional regulation, all these kind of things. So that's where I feel that there's some really fantastic and wonderful things from psychology, whether it's tapping tools, clinical psych, depth psychology, a little bit of shadow work. Like, I'm not saying that people start going out there and calling themselves things, but just being aware of what's going on within their own psyche so they can relate better and interact better and live richer, more fulfilling lives.
Absolutely. And if anyone was listening in, and we've obviously got all your details below of how people can get in contact and maybe even access what you're talking about.
Yeah.
If someone was listening in and kind of went, you know what, this makes total sense to me, and I want to go and take some action fairly immediately if I can, in
Yeah.
all your years of what you've been exposed to, is there any maybe activity or tool that you suggest might be something to get someone started on this pathway of perhaps, maybe going into a little bit of that story or trying to understand a little bit more about self,
Mm.
something that they might be able to take away and do?
Yeah, no, great question. Well, yeah, this is pretty funny. Do you want me to do it for you now?
Absolutely, yes. I'll be
Okay,
the guinea
cool.
pig.
You want me to be the guinea pig?
Yep.
Okay, sure. All right. Well, let's do it. There's a few ways we can do it. There's two. One is what's your favorite movie?
Oh, probably a Marvel movie. So I'll
Oh
give
yeah,
you genre. There's my sense of humor, everybody.
yep.
We're a bit of a Marvel family. Which one? Oh, look, I quite like Iron Man.
Of course you do.
Say.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Iron Man. I love it.
I love the music. I just think they nail the music and the humor. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you're gonna love this one.
Okay, good.
So we'll do this. This is the Shadow, partially Shadow, but the movie that you like, and the protagonist in that movie that you relate to the most, is how you see yourself in the world.
Really?
Yeah. And so,
My husband is going to laugh when he hears this.
well, so Iron Man is a lone hero who basically, to somewhat lone, eventually got a team behind him. But really, Iron Man is a highly individualistic in a really positive way. And you're going
Yep.
to love this. What the first Iron Man movie? What actually happens is he goes into a cave.
Yes.
He gets a new heart, and then 3 days later he comes out of the cave, which is actually the Christ resurrection story.
It is, yeah, it absolutely is, and echoes of Sunday school coming back
Yeah,
in. Yeah,
and
it is. Yes.
isn't that fascinating? And so that's called meme jacking, that they've essentially taken this collective unconscious idea of someone who's willing to set. And of course, how does the I'm not going to spoiler alert for anyone. How does it end? It ends with him sacrificing himself for the collective.
Oh my goodness, I'm a little bit speechless, Gavin. Yeah, you've just nailed me. Everyone knows my story. Here we go.
Yeah, well, so
Wow.
that's Christ consciousness, which is, and the beauty of Christianity. There's a lot of beautiful things in Christianity. Christ consciousness is, and people can hit that, is like that willingness to, as you talked about, Joe, sacrifice himself for the cause, be 10 years, sitting there in a car crying because of that, for you to put, your career and all of this stuff on the line, willing to put something out there. And that's what's so inspiring about you. I think that's why a lot of people are like, man, Peter's, you're my hero. You're one of my heroes for sure. I'm totally like, Peter's awesome. For the exact reason that we just discussed. And so that's now obviously coming through in that story. So it's a really good way to just immediately look at how someone shows up in the world. And yeah, does that make sense?
It does. So if someone was listening, kind of thinking what's their favorite movie, is it
Yeah,
about identifying with the person in the movie that they most obviously have some connection with? And it could
yeah,
be it could be the main character, but it could be a secondary character in the movie. And is it about pondering or thinking, what do I see in myself?
yeah.
In
So that's a kind of a good golden shadow one. So it's like, what positive characteristics does this person have that I also have? Is a great way to ask that question.
yeah.
And so, yeah, you've gone out there, you've put your money where your mouth is, you've essentially personally done this yourself. You know what I mean? You haven't waited for anyone else to get their hands dirty. You've gone into the lab, you've fixed it up, and now, God willing, you're not going to sacrifice for yourself for the cause. But there's probably been a theme of a lot of sacrifice over the years. I know you've got
Oh,
incredible work
100%.
ethic,
Yeah, and it's funny
extraordinary
because
work ethic. Yeah,
100%. If you look back sometimes, and you do have those moments, even in the EFT world, where you're like, I
yeah,
often have said to myself, I could have picked an easier area. Like I truly, wow. Yeah, talk about the road less traveled. We're talking 22 years ago was when EFT came into my world. This
mm,
has not been an overnight thing. I'm like, geez, it would have made my life easy if I just went the old CBT route,
yep,
But there was always this, yeah, inner, I guess, something in me, just looking for something that's better, or just looking for something that would offer more ease. Yes, that's probably what it is. I do say I'm impatient at heart, so anything that's a little bit faster or quicker, but still gets me the same outcomes, I'm like, done, all good. And I blame my parents. So I can remember
mm,
coming home. I must have only been 10 or 11, 12 years old, And my mother was studying by distance education, so she would have, all the booklets on the table of whatever assignments she was doing. And I remember clearly learning that she was studying plant medicine. And it was only not to practice, but it was for her own personal interest.
Wow.
And my dad, even though, dad's had a life of being a sign writer and a painter, house
Oh,
painter,
fantastic.
my father regularly goes off to this day to his weekly acupuncturist. He takes his Chinese herbs and boils them on the stove and drinks them. So I have two parents that have been so that, yeah, there was no hope for me going mainstream here at all. So
Yeah. Well, I love that. And this is, isn't it nice, right? To just have that 6 S's where you're like, oh yeah, let's look at social, because social is enculturation, it's early childhood, and not in some sort of like negative, way. It's just, well, how am I being influenced? I'm a product of to some extent, I'm an emergent, myself is an emergent function of all of these things. Like, how do I look at it? And that's a really nice framing. Okay. Well, then the other one, if you wanted to actually experience some of this good old fashioned cognitive mind, we can do that too.
Absolutely.
All right. So, cool. So what is an area of life that you would like to succeed in? Or better still, let me ask it this way. 12 months from today, what are we celebrating, Peter?
Oh, what are we celebrating? Our brand new home that we've embraced. And yeah, so we're in the family process of letting go of the home that we're in now, but we haven't yet, and this is really interesting because people in my life do know, we haven't yet found the home that will replace it. And we are actively looking and have been looking for about a year, and it has not emerged yet.
Okay, so would you say this is like just something that's present for you and alive for you?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so let's do this then. So can I just have permission just to take control of this session a little bit?
Yes, of course.
Yep. All right, so if you wouldn't mind just sitting back on your chair, closing your eyes, taking a nice deep breath. Good. And another one. And the third one, if you wouldn't mind just making a nice audible. Good. One more time, just with an audible exhale. Good. Just noticing your feet flat on the floor. Noticing the weight, gravity in your feet and your legs. Just noticing yourself planted in your chair, the gravity holding you down in your sit bones. Yeah, so how are you feeling in this moment?
Yeah, a bit heavier.
Yeah.
Probably because I'm focusing on the gravity.
Yeah, good. All right. Is there any tension in your body?
Not really.
Okay, cool. All right, so what I'd like you to do is now just visualize you're in this beautiful house, the house you've been dreaming of. It's exactly what you're looking for. Kids are running around happy, husband's happy. Tell me more about what it is you see when you visualize this perfect home.
Spacious, very light. Funnily enough, double story, which is not necessarily something that we were thinking of, but 2-story. It just seems I'm standing out the front, quite like light in colour. Yeah, just spacious. That's part of what we're looking for. Yeah, has a lovely energy.
Okay. And so now, how do you feel in your body when you think about that, when you visualize that scenario?
Centered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like an authentic feeling, like a given.
And where do you feel that authentic feeling?
Heart chakra, solar plexus.
Beautiful. And what does that sensation feel like?
Warm. It just feels right.
Cool. And are there any other negative sensations in your body as well?
The only thing that's coming up is
Mm.
we have to have a curveball.
Mm.
Where I'm standing and where I visualize it, see it,
Mm-hmm.
is on the same block of land where we currently are.
Mm.
But my brain can't figure out how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
As in, obviously, to knock down, rebuild. It hasn't been part of the conversation, but that's where it looks like. I'm not fixed that it has to be there, but that's what it looks like in my mind. So part of my brain's going, that's not possible.
Mm. Okay. And so that negative sensation, where are you feeling that sense of not being possible?
More in my forehead, like more in my head.
Mm. Okay, good. So, and how does that sensation feel?
Like just a tightness.
Mm. Okay. So I just want you to breathe into that tightness for a minute. And I also want you to notice and remember the centeredness and the rightness and the authentic feeling as well in your heart and your solar plexus. And just notice that both of those feelings are actually present at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So now, yeah, and how are you feeling generally right now?
Yeah, I feel okay. Like it's okay that they can both be present.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, so I just want you to bring your awareness now back up to that tightness in the forehead. And I just want you to feel that tightness now moving down your face, into your throat chakra. And how's it feel in your throat chakra?
Probably just a slight tightness, like
Mm-hmm.
moving it down. Not overly though.
Okay. And if that tightness could say something, what would it want to say?
Anything is possible.
Mm-mm.
It'll be
Great.
open to possibility.
Beautiful. All right, so just breathe into that. Now I'll just bring it a little bit further down if that feels okay, just to drop it into your heart, letting that tightness move down from your throat into your heart chakra. And how's it feel there?
Yeah, it feels okay.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a very good descriptor, is it? Well, it doesn't feel like a tightness. It's still that same kind of message or feeling of anything is possible.
Hmm.
It's not really a feeling.
What sensation is it?
It's probably more matching the kind of knowingness, the authentic part that I talked about before. It's more that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And does that energy now want to move up or down?
Down.
Good. All right, so let's now move it down to the solar plexus. And how's it feel there?
Yeah, it feels right. It just feels like it's kind of concentrated at that chakra kind of point.
Yeah, well, tell me about the energy. Is it moving? What's going on with it?
It's like no, it feels quite clear. Like if I imagine it beaming out from that, it would just be like a solid beam.
Hmm.
Yeah, like concentrated in a single spotlight.
Cool.
Oh, it's a bit like Iron Man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's actually, I wasn't thinking that, but that's what it looks like.
Cool.
Wow.
Awesome. Yeah, nice one. Nice one. Power center. That makes sense.
Oh,
Makes sense. All right. And then so if you move it a little bit lower, what's
yeah, it's
going on
probably
there?
colour a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Bit more swirly, bit more movement if I move it
Mm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
How about the sensation? What does it feel like?
Uh, yeah, just flowing.
Mm-hmm.
Just not so concentrated, just more flowing movement.
Mm-hmm. And if it
But
could say something,
positive.
sorry, what was that, Peter?
Positive. Yeah, positive feeling. If I could say something, just to stay open. It's kind of the message of like something's about to happen.
Mm.
And I have been trying to just trust the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Trust the timing. That's quite a nice one, isn't
Hmm.
it?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll drop one more down into the root chakra.
Yeah, that just feels stable, more solid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not moving as much energetically, just stable, like the base.
Yeah, cool. And just feel that
Hmm.
energy just moving through your legs, down into the ground, through the soles of your feet. We haven't taken it up to the third eye or the crown yet, so we'll finish the job. But how's that feeling now? Is that flowing for you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So now let's just draw it back up your feet, up your legs, up each of those chakras, and up now to your back to your third eye. Noticing that it's connected to the ground, that it's flowing through from the earth up to your third eye. How's that feeling now in the head?
Mm-hmm. Quite stable.
Yeah. What else?
Yeah, I can sort of imagine again, like a beam of light just out from the third eye, middle of the forehead, as well as one straight out the crown.
Yeah. Good. All right. So let's go right up to the crown now. That's
Yep.
better. How's that feeling?
Yeah. Yeah, good. Yeah, like drawing upwards.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, pulling up.
Cool. So just breathe into that.
My face is quite warm.
Mm. Feel free to share anything if you want to. If not, also fine.
Yeah, it's just a drawing up feeling, but then it was almost like it came down on the outside of my face. So not
Mm.
an internal feeling, more of an outside kind of warmth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's good. It's a good feeling.
It's good, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Oh, I feel like I need to open my eyes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please do.
yeah, yeah, it just sort of felt like it was on the outside I don't know what that was, but
Mm.
no, it was good. It was good.
Yeah,
Probably got lost. Yeah.
probably got lost. Well, that's okay.
Times did still.
Time does change. There's a flow state, right? Nice flow state.
Absolutely.
Good group
Yes.
flow. I knew would do it. And yeah, so then what you'll probably find, what people will tend to find is then just a reduction in any sort of resistance, right? I mean, this is cognitive somatic. We just moved into where it is you wanted to go. What was some of the felt senses in the body, what that wanted to express to you, and then just sort of moving that through the system and letting it clear. And like I said, it's obviously subclinical. Like this is not a situation where, this isn't where you'd refer someone to, but these are little tensions which can just make life a bit more flowy, and these sorts of transitions and processes around, these things can be a bit nicer because can be stressful to move. It is your home, and you probably love a lot of things about your existing block, right? So we're bringing out the
Yeah.
psychic tension between where you want to be and where you
Yeah.
still are, and some of those things, and just dissolving some of that resistance. So
Amazing. And I hope anyone listening in may have participated along, or certainly rewind and apply it to something in your own life. Gavin, where can people find you? Everyone wants to
well,
now find you.
I've been hiding in plain sight behind the scenes around the places. So my name's a little challenging to spell, but Growing Tall Poppies will be the name of my book. So just go there, growingtallpoppies.com, and that'll redirect to my website, and you can find all the things and get my little mini course on this 6S thing, so you don't have to hear me ramble it on podcasts all the time, because it's pretty good, and I've priced that quite effectively so people can just get that map and model. And then, yeah, where this goes from here, we'll see. I'd certainly love you to be part of it in some capacity, Peter. As I said, I think you're absolutely fantastic, and an Iron Man hero of the Christ consciousness variant. And I mean, the thing with our mutual friend Kez I was talking about was really, it's very hard to understand me without understanding all of these incredible influences and mentors and people I've been around. And so, not to be all golden shadow about it, but I just love to bring the Avengers along for the ride for this one, because I think
love
there's
it.
some really exciting stuff.
I can't believe that's the movie I actually picked.
Yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
well, that's it, right? So we're putting together the crew, the Avengers, all these amazing fourth wave psychologists who've put themselves out there, or coaches, or anyone, authors, thought leaders, driving the industry forward, driving these states of consciousness forward, giving people access to their own bodies, their own cognition, and that nice blissful state of flow. And maybe we'll end it on that note.
I think that's brilliant. Gavin, it has been an absolute pleasure in more ways than one, and I am the first person that's going to be ordering Growing Tall Poppies to read,
Thanks,
so
Peter.
I can't wait to devour that. I hope everyone listening in has absolutely enjoyed that as much as I. I'm like in a twilight state at the moment. Like I probably need to go and regroup, because I'm off time. I lost time for a moment there, so it'll be interesting to see how long that was for, because I came back and didn't know where I was. I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I have, everybody. Gavin, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see maybe what we can co-create moving forward as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.